Hi, my name is Stuart Lynch, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can add a custom SwiftUI calendar that I showed you how to build in a previous video to display tallies of events on the calendar. You can turn the calendar into a different kind of chart view to get a better understanding of your data. I love getting your feedback, so tap the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video and leave a comment below. Make sure you subscribe to the video and ring that bell to get notifications of new videos. And if you want to support my work, you can buy me a coffee. Before we get into this video, I want to apologize to all of you in the other countries where the start of the week is not a Sunday. That date extension that I created in the last video in this series fixes the first day of the month as a Sunday, and the custom calendar view doesn't accommodate different start days. Well, the good news is that I've fixed that, but the bad news is that I created this video before I was made aware of my ignorance. So I've updated the completed source code for the previous video, so if you're following along, you may wish just to get that new version of the date extension from the video when you are asked later on to add to the calendar. Now, if you've downloaded the entire source code from that video, you'll get that updated version. Now, the updates were relatively simple. First of all, I added a new static property called first day of week that gives me either Sunday or Monday or whatever day your week starts at. And then I create a variable for weekdays instead of a constant, as this array will always start with the Sunday, which is a weekday of 1. Then, if the first day of week is greater than 1, I simply pull those days from the beginning of the array and attach them to the end before I map them into the capitalized array of shortened day names. Then, instead of creating a computed Sunday before start day property, I call it first weekday before start, and I use it to subtract from the start of month weekday instead of the hard-coded one. And then finally, for the day offset, I use the new property instead of the old one. That's it. Problem solved. In this video, I'm going to be adding a custom calendar to an already developed application and show you how you can use the calendar kind of like a chart view. What I want to do is to somehow show tallies of grouped events on the dates that these events occurred. So first, let me show you the starter application, and I'll show you what we'll be doing. You can download the starter project from the link in the description. You can either clone it or download the zip file. Just make sure you download the main branch, as that'll be the starter project. There'll be 2 more branches when you watch this video. One will be the completed source code from this video, and another one will be an extension to that. More on that later. The application is using SwiftData for its persistence layer, but that's only relevant to how you fetch your persist data and update it. I'll spend little time discussing SwiftData here, but you may want to look at the project in more detail than I'll do now if you want to see how I've coded the application. I have a full series on SwiftData, and I'll leave a link in the description. It's a fully functioning app with some mock data already loaded in memory. You can see that I have 4 categories of activities in this list view, each with a number of workouts recorded. What you'll see in terms of those numbers will be different because I have a date extension here and a function in my date extension file that generates a random date and time between the current date and 3 months previous. The activity model uses that date and other sample data to create workouts and insert 15 to 50 workouts into the database for each activity. So each one will use one of those random dates. So the activity has a relationship to the workout model where it's a one-to-many relationship. In the activity list view, you could add a new category, and you can from here pick an icon and color. You can edit an existing one by swiping from the leading edge, or you can delete from the trailing edge. And when you tap on one of the activities, you're shown a list of all of the workouts for that category sorted by date. And each one of these can be edited or deleted as well. Now, each time the preview refreshes, a new set of data is generated. So as I said, your numbers will likely be different from these. Now, the problem with this workouts list view is that you don't really get a clear idea as to what activity happened on what day and what's my overall activity participation. Well, what I want to do is to use that custom calendar view that I created in a previous video to display the calendar and have it overlaid a tally of all of the activities in that selected month and year, or maybe just tallies for a single activity. So let's get started. Let me start now by creating a new completed project branch, and this then will be the one that you can download for the completed source code. So I'm going to begin by creating a tab view. So I'm going to create a new SwiftUI file and I'll call it Start Tab. And then I'll replace the text view with a tab view. And then I'm going to create two tab items. For the first, I'm going to use the activity list view as the view, and I'll configure the tab items using a label with the title key activities, and it will use the system image figure.mixed.cardio. For the second, I'm just going to use a text view placeholder for now with the string calendar view. And then for the tab item, I'll use the label with the title key calendar. And for the system image, I'll use a calendar. Now you're not seeing any mock data in the activities tab right now. Instead, what you are seeing is that content unavailable view because there is no data. In fact, if you tried to add one here, the preview would crash. What you need to do is to import SwiftData so we can use our mock data. And then in the preview macro, you can provide the model container for the activity.preview container, which is the mock data provider. Now you can go to the My Workouts app file, the starting point for the app, and change the initial view to Start Tab. Once you've done that, you can go to the Start tab, you can create a new activity. And sometimes my preview won't allow me to type in a text field, and I don't understand what this is all about. It could be a bug in Xcode. I've found that by switching the device to another one will usually fix this. Sometimes I can make it work if I change the preview, so let me change it to iPhone 15 Pro. That still isn't working, so let me change the device up here to an iPhone 15 Pro for the simulator. Now I'm good to go. So when I tap the plus button, I can create a new entry. So let me choose hiking. And I'll choose the hiking icon. And I'll set a different color. Now you see there are 0 workouts. When I tap on that button, I'm taken to the next screen where I'm instructed to tap on the plus button to create a new workout. So let's create one. And I'll add a comment. It gets created and listed. Returning back shows that there is one workout in the list view for hiking. Perfect. So now I know that my app is running and I have a tab view here for this initial view, but now I need to create the calendar view so that I can pick any month or year and see the number of activities I performed on any given day and perhaps even tap on the day to list them. I also want to be able to select one of the activities and only see the tallies for that one particular activity. Now, since this is a follow-up to the previous video, I'm assuming that you watched that video on how I built the custom calendar based on what I learned in a Sean Allen widget course. I'm going to be using that calendar and modifying it slightly to display tally counts for the number of times I performed the workouts on any particular day. So the first thing I need to do then is to get that calendar into my project. And you can download the source code for that project from the link in the description. So first, I'm going to create a new group in my Workouts project, and I'm going to call it Calendar. And so I can open the calendar app that I downloaded, that finished source code, and drag the calendar file from the app into that new folder group, and make sure you choose Copy Items if needed. Now, this calendar uses some date extensions that we don't have in this workout app yet, but since I already have a date extension here, open the date extension for the custom calendar app and copy them from there, and then paste them into the existing date extension for the My Workouts app. And then I can return to the Start tab, and I'm going to change that text view placeholder for the second tab to be the calendar view. So the calendar view is going to be displaying the number of workouts that occurred during a particular month. So this means that we're going to need a dynamic query to fetch those workouts only for the selected month. And in fact, we don't want to give the users the ability to pick a specific day. We just need to know the actual month and year to be able to display the calendar. So we'll need to create a view that allows us to make that choice and filter the workouts for that month only, and then count the number of workouts and pass those values into our calendar to display in the month and create those tallies. This means we'll need to start with another SwiftUI view that I can call Calendar Header View. We'll create this within the Calendar Groups folder. Then I'm going to replace the text view inside there with a navigation stack. And then inside there, a V-stack. And that V-stack is going to display the calendar view. And I'll push it up to the top by adding a spacer. And then I'm going to set the navigation title to Tallies. Well, I can return to the Start tab view then and change that second tab item to Calendar Header View. So it's in this Calendar Header View that I want to be able to create some pickers that'll allow me to select a year and a month. So I'm going to, first of all, take a look at how I'm going to be able to provide the months available. So I'll create a state property for month date that we can initialize as the current date.now. So when the view opens, it's going to know that we're using the current month. So I'm going to return to the calendar view now and change that state property for date just to be a let, because then we'll pass in that date from our header view. That means I can remove the labeled content date picker. Then I can stop the preview from complaining by adding in the date of date.now. Back in the header view, I can pass in the month date as the argument as well to the calendar. So now we'll need to be able to create pickers that allow us to pick a month and a year to update that date to any date that might be within the range of our set of completed workouts. Well, I plan to do this by offering every month of the year, but only offer years for which we have data. And in my mock data at the time of my creating this video, I have data from 2024 and 2023 because my mock data creates workouts back 3 months from the current date. And right now, it's only January. But if you're watching this sometime in April or May, you'll only get dates from a single year, the current year. So I'm going to create a state property that will be called years. That's going to be an array of int, but I'll initialize it as an empty array. Now we'll find this out by querying all of our workouts and then just extract the years. And that's what I can use for this array. So I'm going to create 2 state properties for the selected year and the selected month. And these will change as I select a different year or month. But when the app launches, I want those to be the current year and current month for the current day. Now, I already have an extension to determine the month integer. So I can initialize this selected month as the date.now.monthInt. We created that extension to date in the previous video. Now, I don't have one yet for year. So I'll go back to the extension, and just below the month int computed property, I'll create a similar one just for the year int. So the component will be the year instead. And while you're at it, because I know I'm going to need this later, create one for day int as well. That uses the day component. So now I can return to the header view and I'll create a new state property for the selected year, and I'll initialize it as the date.now.yearInt. And then to offer up the full set of months from the date extension, I created a computed property that you would have downloaded from the previous video, and it uses or gets an array of month names, and that computed property is the full month names. So it's a static property, so months is going to be equal to date.fullmonthsnames, and that will return for your language all of those months. In the VStack then, we can create a picker that will iterate over these values and update that selected month. The initial value will be that selected month, and it'll be bound to it. So for the label, we can use an empty string with the selection to the selected month. Inside, we can use a for each loop using the months.indices, where the ID is self. That'll get us an index. And then we can present the text for the months at that index. And then we'll set the tag to, if we just said index, it'll be off by 1, since the index starts at 0. So we'll have to specify index plus 1. To fetch the available years, we'll need to perform a query on our SwiftData that is storing our content. So I'll first import SwiftData. And then, so we have some content to work with, in our preview, we'll add the model container for the activity.preview to the preview. Well, now we can create a query that we'll call workouts that will simply return or fetch our array of workout. Remember, each activity is going to have a workout, but if I fetch all the workouts, it'll get me all the workouts for all of our activities. And then I can create an onAppear block, or I can extract all the years, and I'm going to do that by mapping the workouts array by extracting the iterators $0.date.yearInt. But this will have multiple entries all the same for the same year. So we can turn that into a set that will exclude all duplicates, and then turn it back into an array again. And this updates the years array. But we also want to present this as our years being sorted. Now we can create the years picker. So I'm going to embed that month picker in an H stack. Now, there's another one of my typos, so let me fix that first. So as the first item in the H stack, I'm going to create a picker that's bound to the selected year. And then I can use a for each loop over the years with the ID being self. And then I can use the year as the iterator to display the text. And I'll use the string representation of year so I don't get any commas. And then to the entire H stack, I'm going to apply a button style of bordered. Well, now we have a month and a year. We can create a date by just saying the day is going to be the first day of the month, but the month and the year will be those selected ones. And we'll do this every time we either change the month or the year. So I'm going to create a function outside of the body called updateDate. And then I'm going to assign to the month date the calendar.currentDate from, and it's going to be composed of date components where the year is the selected year, the month will be our selected month, and the day will just be 1. And that has to be unwrapped. And then we can create 2 onChange modifiers, one for the selected year, where we'll update the date, and another on change where we're watching for changes on the selected month, and that will update that date. And then you can test this now, and you'll see that by selecting a different year or month, our calendar updates accordingly. That's a great start. Well, now that we can pick a date, we also want to be able to show tallies for either all of our workouts on a single calendar or just pick one of the activity types and display those tallies on the calendar and update the calendar color to that activities color as well. So that means we're going to have to create another picker. Well, we'll need to know all of the different activities that we have in our database, so we can fetch those through another query. And we can also use a sort argument to sort on the activity name key path to fetch an array of activity that we'll call activities. And I'll create a selected activity property that's actually an optional activity. So it'll be nil by default, and that will represent all activities. In the V stack then, above the H stack, I'm going to create a picker that will present all of our activity names to us. So that picker will use an empty string, but it'll be selected to that bound selected activity. But remember, the first item here is going to represent all of them. So we'll have to use a text view, all, and we'll tag it as nil, but we'll need to cast that as an optional activity. And then we can use a for each loop on all of our queried activities. And that will provide us with an activity iterator that we can fetch the name from. So we can specify a text view of activity name, and the tag will be that activity. But again, we have to cast it as an optional activity. And for this one, I'm going to set the button style to bordered prominent. So now we can have a selected activity that we can pass into our calendar view, where we can perform another query on the workouts that'll filter on that array if it's not nil, and we can use the color of that set as well. So we'll add that, select that activity to the calendar view, which means we now have to return to calendar view and make sure that it expects this property. And we can use that then as a condition to create a dynamic filter for our workouts array. Again, that's all covered in my SwiftData series. So in the calendar view, I'll import SwiftData, and then I'll get the mock data for the preview from the activities preview container. Now we can create that new property for the selected activity. And remember, it's optional. So selected activity, optional activity. And then I'll pass a nil into the preview just to get it working again. So first, we'll create the query that gets all of the workouts. It's simply a query where the workouts gets the array of workout. Same one that we did in the previous view. But now we'll create an initializer where we can pass in those two properties, and then at the same time use those to update the query based on that selected activity. So first, we'll set the date and the selected activity properties to our view to the initial values passed in. Self.date is date, self.selected activity. And then we can use the query to filter our workouts base on that passed in date to only use the ones for the month that is being displayed. So first, the predicate, which will use the predicate macro for workout. And here we compare the return dates if the iterator's date is greater than or equal to the date that was passed in at start of month, and that same iterator's date is less than or equal to the passed in date's end of month. Now you'd think that this would work, but there is an issue. Remember I told you about that end of month where we had to remove a day to get the adjustment as it was midnight? of the following day? Well, the reverse thing happens here. We'll need to add a day back for our comparison. We covered that in the last video. So I'll create an end of month adjusted by using the calendar.current.date by simply adding a date component with a value of 1 to the date's end of month. And then I can use it in my comparison. And of course, it's optional, but it's safe to unwrap here. Well, once you have that, you can adjust the query by using an underscore workouts equals a query where the filter is our predicate, and I'll sort by workout date. So if we have a selected query, we'll get a color. So we don't need that color picker anymore. But if we passed in nil, we'll still need a color, so we'll use blue. So I'm going to remove that state color property, and I'm going to remove the color picker. And then just after you create the body, I'm going to create a new property for color that will check to see if the selected activity is nil. And then using the ternary operator, if it is nil, I'll use blue. Otherwise, I'm going to form a color from the hex, which is our selected activity's hex color. And this hex function is an extension on color that's in the color extension for this project. Now, there's definitely something wrong here as I'm getting a number of errors. Let me see. Oh, fat fingers again. This should be a comma separating these arguments. Now we're good. I can return to the calendar view now and choose a different activity. And you'll see that the colors change. The final thing we need to do now, though, is to display a count of the activities for that selected activity, or for all of them if we haven't selected one. In the calendar view, I'd like to create a function that'll tally the number of activities performed in that month for a selected activity by day. For this, I'm going to create that function, and it will create a dictionary where the key will be a day value, so 1 through possibly up to 31, and the value will be the count of activities that occur on that particular day. So it'll be a state property that I'm going to call counts, and I'll initialize it as that empty dictionary where both the keys and values are those ints. And then I can create a function called setUpCounts. So I'll create a property called filtered workouts and assign it the current full set of workouts for that month. Then I can use an if-let to unwrap selected activity, and if it's not nil, then you can adjust the filtered workouts by filtering the workouts where the activity is equal to the selected activity. So then you'll only have the workouts for that selected activity. Remember, every time we create a workout, that workout has a date, and the day int for that workout will be the day of the month. So what I can do is create an array of tuples that uses the day int as the first item and then a 1 as the second item. So for example, if I performed 3 workouts on the 22nd of a month, there would be 3 tuples all being 22, 1. And then I can create an array of those tuples by mapping the filtered workouts to create the tuple as the iterators $0.date.dayInt and then a 1. Well, what's really cool is that you can use an initializer to create a dictionary when you have a sequence of key value tuples that might have duplicate keys like we have. For example, those 3 22s. Well, as the dictionary is built, the initializer calls a combine closure with the current and the new values for any duplicate keys, and then it passes a closure as combine that returns the value to use the resulting dictionary. And that closure can choose between 2 values, combine them, produce a new value, or even throw an error. So to combine the values, we can use the unique keys with and specify a plus. So it'll simply add up all the ones and provide us with a dictionary. This is really slick. Well, now we can call this function in the onAppear block and in the onChangeOfDate function. But we'll also want to call this anytime we change the selected activity. So we'll create another onChange watching the selected activity and call setUpCounts there. Well, we're almost there. Now we need a way to display these counts based on the date. So I'm going to do two things. First of all, if the count value for that day is not nil, I'm going to change the opacity of our circle to 0.8 instead of that 0.3. So it'll be bolder. And that's done in the foreground style. So where we set that opacity, we check the counts dictionary for that day int value. And if it's not nil, we set it to 0.8, otherwise 0.3. And then we repeat that for the other option here too. And secondly, I'm going to use a system image that is a circle with a number in it. And there are 50 of these in the SF symbols. There's simply 1.circle.fill, 2.circle.fill, 3.circle.fill, and so on. So I'm going to create an overlay with an alignment of bottom trailing. And then I'll use an if-let to unwrap the count, meaning if it's found a value in the dictionary for that day's day int, I'll create an image using that system name, and we'll use string interpolation to use the count with circle.fill. Now, there are only 50, so if the counts are less than or equal to 50, we'll use that. Otherwise, we'll use a plus.circle.fill. If you have more than 50 workouts on a day, then good on you. So we'll set the foreground style to secondary. And then I'll apply an image scale of medium. And I'll apply a background here using the color system background and a clip shape of circle. And then finally, I'm going to apply an offset of 5 in the X and Y directions just to move it down the bottom right corner. So you can see the preview has changed and it's displaying all activities for this month. So let's go to the Start tab. And then you can go to the Calendar tab. And you can filter on activity type. And you'll see the colors change and the numbers and opacities as well for those different days. I can go back to any previous month, which in my case is December of 2023. And the layout will change as I change those particular picker values. Let me go back to all for this month. And I'm going to make a note of how many activities are on the current day. And I'm going to make a note of how many activities are on the current day, which is the 22nd. And I see that there are 2. Then I'm going to go to the Activities tab and tap on one of the activities, and I'm going to create a new activity for today. And you can choose any one of your activities, and you can leave a comment if you like. And if you return to Calendar tab, you'll see that that number has incremented. And in my case, it's showing 3. Now, my original plan was to show you how to tap on one of those now and display a list of workouts for that activity. But I think I'm going to leave that up to you. But if you're interested in that, I've created an additional branch in this GitHub repository that shows you how to implement that. I encourage you to download that and test out that code, of course, after you've tried it for yourself. So this is what my implementation looks like. Now, if you've enjoyed these 2 videos, please give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and enable notifications so that you're notified when I release a new video. I generally try to release a new one every Sunday. So thanks so much for watching, and if you want to support my work, you can buy me a coffee. The link is in the description.